let's get to the reason we're all here tonight. Kintan Brahmbhatt. I'm really excited to host Kintan for the second time here. He has been an Amazon leader for a while. He's currently the founder and general manager of the podcast group there. Before that, he was a director of product management, technical product management for Amazon Music. Before that, IMDb Everywhere. And prior to in his career, he was at Microsoft as an engineer and a program manager. Again, his Twitter handle is @Kintan. And I'm really excited to hear from today his advice on how to make high quality product decisions. So welcome, Kintan. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And great to see so many. I think there are a few familiar faces. So hello again. And Dan, it's always a pleasure. I've enjoyed both coming in as a speaker, but also as a participant, given the high quality speakers and just the community. So I've made many new friends. I think I may have hired one or two folks from the community. Awesome. At least folks I met first at one of the meetups. So thank you for all you do for the product community worldwide. I should say initially I was going to say in the Bay Area, but worldwide now. So today I'm going to talk about decisions in general and high quality product decisions. And yes, I understand that while most of the folks are in product management right now, some of you may not be in product as of now, and this would help. Some of the topics we'll talk about will be helpful across all disciplines and across all stages of career. A brief background about myself, and then Dan briefly touched upon it. I've been at Amazon for now for over 12 years, and I've been very fortunate to be on the ground floor, I should say, when many of the products or product lines that have now become very large were being conceived and being built. So consider myself very fortunate. And as I was preparing for our conversations today, I went back to my notes from throughout my time at Amazon and looked at insights that I could extract and present in some form with the intention that some of these could be valuable to you in your career, no matter what product you're building. Now, parts of the talk may sound didactic or preachy, and that's far from my intent. So apologize for that. Please know that some of these things have worked for me in a setup in some time, like over the last several years. Mileage may vary. So some of these things may apply to you, some may not. So use these as a perspective. Data point of one, but it's a very informed perspective, just because we've tried these over many years or many types of products in many market segments across, very large customer bases. So hopefully you'll find some value in it. I'm going to talk about concept and share an example of an actual product. I'm going to talk about three specific things today, at the very least. I'm going to spend about the first 20 minutes or so on just first principles of decision making. I'm going to go dissect what a decision is at the very first principle level. Talk about Amazon's approach to informed decisions. You may have heard of the 6-pagers that PMs typically write at Amazon, the mock, press release, and FAQ. And we'll talk a bit about communicating decisions as to, as product builders, we may decide things, but it may not, the shelf life of those decisions may not be as high if you don't communicate them appropriately, especially at scale in a larger setup. So we'll talk a bit about that. So I personally believe firmly that life is the sum of all decisions. And the sugar-free version of that is that the pain we are dealing today as product builders, the bugs we are getting or the customer complaints we may be getting for the products we built are essentially outputs of bad decisions that we or somebody else who worked on the product made in the past. So the best thing is to make sure that the decisions we are making today are considered and to avoid the pain in the future. So it applies to all things. It's a very generic statement, but definitely applies a lot to a product, and I've lived it firsthand. But the good news is that today is the first day of the rest of our lives, so we can start making better decisions right away. I also want to talk about what really makes effective and efficient product teams. We at Amazon, we call it day one culture, or day one, where it's as if we have just started this company, as if we've just started working on this problem set. So decision making in very efficient product teams tends to be both high quality and high velocity. It's very easy to make high quality decisions if in the full spectrum of time. So if time is not a constraint, then we can make really high quality decisions. But the thing that makes it quite tricky is that we need to inform these decisions in a certain time frame, and oftentimes with incomplete information. Second is about, always start with the customers, work backwards. Like, what does that mean? We'll talk about that a bit more. And then the last point is more around not just having top-down decisions, but for the leaders, pushing the decision-making to the lowest level possible across the product org. I'm going to start with my favorite analogy and a question. And some of you I recognize may have heard me talk about this in the past. So apologize for the repetition. It'll be a good reminder. But could folks say, like, what is product building or product management more like in your opinion? Is it more like chess, or is it more like poker? Could folks share their answers in the chat box? Let me open up the chat box as well to see if. So if you were to use the analogy, is product management more like poker or chess? All right, got a few poker votes, one vote for chess, a bit of both. It is magic, you're right. It is magic. All right. There's a little bit of both. I'm seeing a little bit of both. The votes are kind of mixed. There's not a clear winner. Maybe I could see there's probably one or two more votes for poker. Oh, there you go. There's more for chess. There's no right answer to this. So thank you for sharing. I think there's a perspective, although that I think will be useful for the rest of our conversation today. When in chess, in my personal opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think it's more like poker. I've personally found that it's more like poker, and for one specific reason. Because in chess, it's perfectly reasonable that after the fact, you can go back to the decisions you made and say, if you lost a round, you could go back and point to a specific move you made at that point and say, hey, that was the wrong move, given the information at that time. Now, in poker, you could have made a perfect move at that time based on the info you had, but there were so many factors outside your immediate control. You don't know what the next card's going to be. You don't know what whether the other person's going to be bluffing or betting, and so on. And same is true for products. When we are building products, we don't quite know what's going to happen in the macro trends in the industry, what's going to happen at the competitors, what's going to happen within your own resources, and so on. Oftentimes, things kind of come out of left field, and we need to be, as product builders, be aware of that and treat our decisions as probabilistic decisions, as bets. As you make a bet in poker, in building products, once we start treating building products as making bets and start using that vocabulary as well, that, hey, I hypothesize that this is this, so I bet that if you do X, then Y will be the result. It kind of changes the frame of mind and frame of decision making for the entire team, not just you yourself as a product builder, but your stakeholders in engineering, design, your leadership team, board, and also customers. You can keep it, you can reflect it in your customer positioning as well. Here's another one, and this is a simpler one, but I'll just still ask it. Is product building more like being a journalist? So we have Anderson Cooper on the right, representing journalists. Or is it more like Sherlock Holmes, where you're a detective, you're a truth-seeking detective? The journalists and detectives, they both seek truth in some way, but journalists report truth more so, and detectives kind of are more on a mission to seek truth.
I just launched a poll. So
that's great. That's even better. All right. Here we are seeing that the votes for detective are definitely winning. we have about 80-20 Pareto in favor of detective, 83-17. So I tend to agree that building products is more about seeking truth, and seeking truth about what the customers need, who the customers are, what do they need, what are their needs, hopes, desires, fears, aspirations, and so on, and how can your product help address those? What are customers' existing behavior? What is the existing human behavior, and where can your product help align with that behavior? So I think it's important for product builders to take the frame of mind of truth-seeking detectives, and truth-seeking is the operative word there, because building products is nothing but a game of decision-making under conditions of time and uncertainty. So this is where it all summarizes, that building products is decision-making under conditions of time, a time spectrum, and uncertainty, things that you don't control. Because things you control, you're obviously going to take those into account, but things that you don't control. And taking a frame of reference of treating it as a probabilistic activity as well as treating it as a truth-seeking detective is going to be helpful. I'm hoping that's making sense. I'm going to quickly start into examples, but I want to establish the baseline as to what does decision-making have to do with building products, and why is that important for us as a collective product builder community to treat decision-making as a core component of building products. So if we are all aligned that decision-making is key to product building, then it'll be important to understand what is a decision. And from the very first principles, decision is nothing but a bet. That's where the poker analogy comes into play. A bet on a particular future based on your beliefs. Decision is a bet on a future outcome based on your beliefs. And your beliefs will help you make a bet on the future. And once you have clarity of thought into what it is, you'll be able to share your beliefs with the broader team and with the broader stakeholders, as well as make informed bets. So to do that properly, we need to make sure that we understand how we form beliefs. So decision-making and beliefs to inform the decision-making. So typically one would imagine that, we intuitively form beliefs by first hearing something, then vetting the information, deciding whether what we heard is right or not, and then form a belief. In reality, and I'm talking about myself as well, I've had to correct myself many times. We first hear something and we quickly make a blink decision on whether we believe it or not. And then bulk of the time, whether it's a PM writing a spec or a PM, creating a pitch deck or so on, we use that information, we use the artifacts to try and justify the belief that we have already made. We seldom spend time to vet it. Oftentimes we may not have the motivation or the time. Subconsciously, there is a lot of inertia. So as product leaders or product builders, we need to constantly remind us that our belief system is going to form the core of decision-making, and decision-making is going to form the core of our product roadmap. So we need to make sure that we are vetting the decisions appropriately. And beliefs come in two forms, either facts or predictions. And facts could be, I help build parts of the Amazon Music product ecosystem. So a good example would be when we are launching a new music system, the fact would be that yes, customers around the world, there are millions of customers or tens of millions, hundreds of millions of customers around the world are already listening to music, and they want to listen to streaming music. It's been growing at a certain rate. And that's a fact because it's all historic data, and we are going to ensure that we offer a certain unique value proposition to those customers. The prediction component was, when we launched Amazon Music, one of our core differentiators was that when it comes to voice, a smart speaker, Alexa-powered Echo devices speaker, when it comes to voice, Amazon Music will be the best music service out there. So we wanted to make that prediction that if we become the best music service on voice, will be one of the top services, and it'll help fuel our growth. So that was a prediction. Prediction based on certain facts, and then we took both those beliefs into account to form the product roadmap. And example of a product roadmap would be, hey, if I had to make a decision as the product head on whether we prioritize voice features or we prioritize, say, social sharing. I'm just making it up. This is 7-8 years ago. Because of the certain belief system and around the prediction, the fact, we said, hey, you know what? If you have to pick only one of the two, given the limited resources, I'm going to pick voice because that's going to be the key factor for our growth. Does that make sense? And it's important to have conviction and beliefs that are strong and rooted in customer behavior, rooted in actual facts, to be able to make decisions with conviction. Another trap I've seen myself as well as many other folks I've worked with get into is that oftentimes they tend to start with the solution. Instead, I'd encourage everyone to first start with the customer and the problem. So the questions to answer first are not what are we building, how are we building, and when are we going to get it ready, but they are who are we building for? Why are we building it? Why is this going to help solve their problems? And why now is the right time or the best time for us to enter this market segment or to solve this problem? So just something to keep in mind. Easier said than done. Obviously, everyone has the best of intentions. The way to strengthen the belief system, to fortify the belief system, is to use various listening posts. Listening posts tend to be, one of many. These are the 5 ones that we typically use, that I've personally used throughout my career. If the product is already out there, then we look at metrics. If the product is not launched, then we look at metrics and usage in the beta community. Do all kinds of user research, everything from generative research to ethnographic studies and diary studies, to really understand what is the human behavior, what is the customer behavior, regardless of whether our product is in the picture or not. And then how can we align our product with the existing human behavior as opposed to requiring the customers to change new human behavior. Benchmarking is essentially look at what are all the solutions, not just competitor solutions, but what are the alternates that customers are looking at today. So for instance, not just look at if I'm building a new music streaming service or a new podcasting service, not just look at what customers are listening at, not just compare it with, say, Pandora or Spotify or other streaming services, but also compare it to how customers are using their owned music. How are they listening to music on their CDs or vinyl? Or how are they listening to music on terrestrial radio? So look at benchmarks for how a particular need is being solved. Obviously ask customers, if customers are sending you feedback either through email or social media or customer support teams, depending on your product, or sales teams if you're into B2B products, look for those. And then macro trends in the industry. How's the industry going? For instance, in music or in digital media, streaming was taking a hold. Streaming versus ownership, the percentage of customers who started streaming kept on increasing. So that was one macro trend. Or last couple of years now, as we started getting deeper into spoken word and podcasting, we knew that certain genres of podcasts were coming up. Customers were listening to more and more podcasts, more and more creators, A-list celebrities, whether from sports or media or Hollywood, they're all creating podcasts. Now that there was a larger audience base. So really keep those macro trends into mind and collect those listening points to form your belief system. Because once you have a solid belief system, that'll help you make those bets on the future. And that's what great product decision making is. And this is one of my most favorite quotes. I don't recall who said it, but a product builder's job is to talk. Oftentimes in meetings, we are presenting or we are talking to customers, so we are talking to our stakeholders, or engineers, or designers. Our job is to talk, but we get paid to listen. So something to keep in mind. Don't start with the solution and listen. So at Amazon, we've tried to enforce this, to do it in a proper way, in a systematic way, and not just rely on good intentions of the product builders. We have a mechanism where we write a mock narrative, a mock press release in customer's own tone. So it's not a internal spec with jargons, but it's something that assuming that the feature we are building or the product we are building is launching today, and there's a press release in TechCrunch or New York Times or Wall Street Journal, what would that look like? So before a single line of code is written, the PM or, oftentimes non-PMs also write PRs. They'll craft a press release with customer in mind in normal common person language. It'll include quotes from the customers, and it'll describe very simply what the problem is, what the product is, how is the product solving that problem. Then it's accompanied with a set of frequently asked questions a customer might ask, as well as the questions that an internal stakeholder like an engineer may ask or finance partner may ask. And then finally, we also include very rough mocks, very low fidelity mocks to begin with, to kind of try to bring everything together and to showcase what the vision might be. So I want to use a real example of one of my most favorite features of Amazon Music, a feature called Autorip. So let me explain the feature real quick, and we'll talk about how we went about creating a working backwards document for that, or a press release and FAQs for that. So early 2010s, most customers whom we asked, what did they do after what was the first thing they did after they bought a CD on Amazon, was the answer was a resounding, singular answer resoundingly by pretty much everyone, which is as soon as the CD arrived in mail, they ripped it so that they can put it on their MP3 player. They could take it with them on their hikes or on a plane ride or whatever. So we thought ourselves as product builders that if every customer is doing that, why add that friction point for customers? What if we could do it automatically for the customers? And that led to the discovery, the invention or the discovery of this new feature called Autorip. It's a very unique service, and we felt that amongst everyone in the world, Amazon was best suited to be able to do that, because customers bought CDs on our service as well as used us for the digital music as well. So the feature is very simple. As soon as you buy a CD or a vinyl record, before the CD arrives in mail, the MP3 is automatically available in your Amazon Music library. It's still available today, and pretty much everyone from customers to artists to everyone in the industry, they love this feature. If you ever bought a CD on Amazon, you may have the digital version of that song already on the Amazon Music library. So I encourage you to check it out if you haven't done so already. So we started with this as a feature and as the belief system. But as we talked with customers over and over again, we realized that for customers, just getting the new songs was not going to be sufficient, because they want all their music together in a single spot. So talking with customers kind of enhanced and evolved our belief system that this should not happen just for the new songs, and their customers are willing to get rid of the songs that they had ripped themselves, as long as they get high quality MP3 versions of the songs of their CDs in the library. So not only that, we decided that not only the new CDs, but all the CDs that you purchased and also vinyls that you purchased in the past from Amazon, one fine day, you'll open the Amazon Music app and you'll get this notification stating that, hey, we've added a few hundred songs from your Autorip CD purchases for free. And customers were wowed by that. Most customers were wowed by this. This features journey started off about a year or so ago, I would say, because there's a lot of other work. This may sound simple, but it's a non-trivial thing. So I want to talk about this is an actual press release, internal actual press release. What did the first paragraph of the press release look like, and what were some of the FAQs? So a press release is essentially a customer-facing narrative, and it should include a customer quote. So I've highlighted a couple lines because they they kind of get to the crux of what I'm describing in writing the narrative. One of them is that customers can start enjoying their purchases in real time without waiting for the CDs to arrive. And the second piece is this product provides additional benefit by automatically placing MP3 tracks in the cloud player was the name of the app earlier on customers' behalf. And these two lines, they ended up being the foothold or the stronghold of the entire project. And then it kind of carried throughout launch. Frequently asked questions, you can imagine, from all stakeholders. Start with who, what, why, now, how, when, all the basic questions. But here there were more complicated questions that, hey, how do we match the CD to an MP3 song? Because there are so many songs, so many versions of the same CD, the same song maybe in all kinds of, mixed albums and so on. Should it be available just on the desktop app or also on the mobile apps? On the mobile app, should we download it or just make it available online? How does licensing work? And there are so many questions. This is a hard feature and a hard product to build. So kudos to the team that really worked hard to build it. But writing those FAQs and then discussing them over and over again with the respective stakeholders really gave us clarity of thought on informing various decisions. As you can imagine, many of these FAQs were essentially decisions as to what should we do here? Hey, should we have it on mobile apps or should we just have it on web? Or should we have it on the desktop app as well? Things like those. So as we wrote things down, we first figured out what decisions needed to be made, and then we made them. Here's a quick example of the low fidelity visual mocks. Obviously, the design teams would build and craft beautiful looking full fidelity mockups, and can use tools such as Envision or Pixate or many of the Figma, obviously, or many other prototyping tools to share. But even if you don't have any of those just yet, I'd start with just mocking up something with a pen or with your if you have an iPad, just with your Apple Pencil or something, and draw something out to accompany the press release, the narrative, and the FAQ, because that really puts things into context, and it'll bring up a whole new set of questions, a whole new set of decisions that you'll have to make, or you'll have to ensure that your stakeholders make. So this is one quick example of how a press release, a mock press release, a 6-page narrative, typically we call it, we constrained everything to 6 pages. So the press release and the FAQs, they all fit in 6 pages so that we can have a meeting and discuss it properly in a 1-hour meeting. Otherwise, if it's a 20-page document, you may need most of the time to just read the doc properly. So we try to restrict it in 6 pages. So hopefully this gives a perspective on how writing narratives have helped us and how we have done it for one of the projects. The quick example, this is actually the real, once we launched it in Jan 2013, this talks about, this is from the Wall Street Journal, I believe. And as you can imagine, I've underlined the words that were repeated from what was included in the actual original press release. So automatically download the digital versions. Or this is from TechCrunch, where again, gives MP3 versions free for any CDs they purchase from Amazon. So you can imagine how the chain of thought, chain of decision-making kind of persisted from the very beginning, at the beginning of writing the press release and FAQ to the actual press release, actual articles in the press. So I'm going to take a pause and switch topics. So we can't talk about decision-making without mentioning a couple of world-class decision makers. I'm sure you know Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Berkshire Hathaway, very popular company. I'm sure most folks are aware of Warren Buffett, and Charlie Munger is his partner in Berkshire Hathaway. And Charlie Munger in particular is known for having strong judgment, very high judgment, and using various mental models. I'm personally a big student of his, and I've found many of his approaches very useful in informing product decisions. So as I was preparing for this talk, I thought what aspect of things that Charlie Munger has shared and taught that can be applied to PMs. Shane Parrish of Farnham Street blog, Farnham Street and Farnham Street blog, had a really good summary of the heuristics from Charlie Munger that could be universally applicable. So I'm going to share that. And it's basically, in the simplest form, to become better decision makers, we need to be constantly doing two things. One is you want to always be optimizing the decision that you're making. And that second aspect, to counterbalance it, just make sure that you're keeping in mind that how do you minimize error. So when you are informing a product decision, optimizing may mean, hey, what variables matter? And simple things like, hey, the variables such as matching a song in the CD with the song in MP3, or the design of the app. Should it be like, how should the download mechanism work for a song you own versus song that you've just added as an Autorip? How do these variables interact with each other? I'm just sharing one example just to continue the chain of thought, but you can imagine you're designing a new podcast app. How does, if podcasting is part of the same app as music, how does search work? What are the variables on the search results page? What are the variables on the now playing page? How do they interact with each other? How does downloading a podcast versus downloading a song or a playlist or an album work? So constantly understanding the variables and optimizing those variables. At the same time, you need to be mindful that what are the biases your mind may have based on your prior experience or your personal context or your personal belief system, and how might your brain be tricking yourself? And why do you expect a certain outcome? Why is your belief system predicting a certain outcome? How sure are you about making this certain decision, and so on? So these may sound very simple and abstract, but if you constantly get into a habit of asking these two questions or looking at it from these two vectors, looking at every decision from these two vectors, it'll help you become a better decision maker. And I can say that from personal experience that number two, like minimizing error, was something I took for granted, and that's where most of the mistakes tend to happen. And here's why. I asked myself as to why have I seen even folks in my own team and folks in other teams I've had a chance to partner with and work with, folks I advise, because these are most of these folks are very smart, and in decision making, being smart makes it worse. And here's how. One is overconfidence in your own intuition. So you can imagine, if I've been working on digital media, on movies first, on video players, on music, and then on podcasts. So if I were to look at it, say, hey, I have over a decade of experience in building and designing the now playing screen for tens of millions of customers across a variety of media. So I might go with overconfidence that, hey, when I'm building a new now playing screen for podcasting, I quite understand that what should be the main controls on the screen, how should the product work, and so on. And because I have all that intuition of designing the same screen in the past, I could trick myself into believing that, hey, I don't need to kind of go super deep into it. And I don't need to question my own intuition because, hey, I've done it. But guess what? Podcasting is a whole different ballgame. Listening to a playlist is not the same as listening to a podcast. All the episodes in podcasts are not same as all the songs in the playlist, for instance, for songs. So you need to really take a step back as a product builder and question your own intuition. So not to doubt yourself, but just take a pause and question your intuition. Another thing, I know many of the smart PMs are better at data. And oftentimes, once we form our belief system, we tend to use data to kind of slice and dice the data to present it in a way so that it supports our belief system, as opposed to looking at the data to form the belief system. That's where confirmation bias comes into play. So, understanding that, hey, look, everyone's gonna want personalized data. Like, for instance, oftentimes you look at while featuring some content on the homepage, we look at, hey, would customers want personalized content or would they want charts? And I can make a strong enough case for both, depending on what, and actually by using data, you can say, what, look, charts are being used, charts or popular content. Oftentimes we have to pick between, when we do personalization, we have to pick between familiarity versus discovery. Do you want to get customers to rediscover the songs they love, or rediscover the content they love, or help them discover new content that they haven't seen? Now, we can make a strong case for either of the two cases if you're good at slicing and dicing the data. But that's going to lead to a inferior product than what you could build. Instead, I'd look at, I'd encourage folks to go super deep into figuring out that, hey, maybe at a certain time of day or a certain day of the week, maybe on Friday when there's new music coming out, people may want to discover new songs, or look at what a customer's behavior has been. That is this person listening to the same playlist over and over again, or is this person kind of venturing out into new songs? So we can actually personalize it for different people. So I'm using a very generic example, but it's important that to recognize and acknowledge that data can be dangerous, and we need to use data to form our belief systems as opposed to just to support our belief system. And I've seen way too many PMs slice and dice data to just support their belief system. And they kind of get into this trap of confirmation bias, which kind of leads to subpar products. So net, I've kind of come to adopt this vocabulary where I'm not sure. Now, I'm not sure is a more accurate representation of reality. And once we adopt this approach, it makes us more open-minded to folks with opposing views as ours, or a new type of customer need or new set of customer segment that we may not have considered in the past. So I encourage all of you to take the I'm not sure approach and be on this relentless pursuit of curiosity. I'm going to take a pause to kind of change topics. Now I know we have 15 minutes, so I'm going to switch into types of decision making and figuring out that as a product leader or a product builder, you gotta have to make dozens of decisions depending on the complexity of the product and the stage of the product lifecycle. Sometimes it's hundreds of decisions in a year. So how to create capacity for you to focus right amount of time on the right decisions? So I look at decisions along two vectors. One is the reversibility of the decision. It's a one-way door or a two-way door decision. Like how easy is it to reverse it? And the second is magnitude of the impact, or magnitude of the impact of the outcome. So if you make this decision, what's the worst that'll happen and how big it is? So one-way door decisions, one of the things I've used is for one-way door decisions, list out all the risks, all the things that could go wrong or that could be a hurdle in achieving that. And try to, say, hey, this is the riskiest assumption. List all the risks, the riskiest thing, put it on the top, and use all your time to eliminate those risks or quantify the risks so that you can manage that. And the most important part of one-way door decisions is to identify and to know that it's a one-way door decision. The mistake I've seen a lot of folks make, and I've myself made in the past, is to not treating a one-way door decision as a one-way door decision and a reversible decision as a reversible decision. Oftentimes, folks tend to treat a reversible decision as a one-way door decision. And the most common mistake is that they wouldn't take a U-turn. They made a decision, they know they can revert it, they know they can deprecate the feature, they know they can stop investing further, they know they can cut the product or so on, but they don't do it. They don't have the courage to do it. They don't have the willpower or the belief system to do it. So recognizing that you are making a two-way door decision, tracking that it is a two-way door decision, and then constantly auditing, 90 days after launch, 180 days after launch, 1 year after launch, that, hey, is this still the right decision? And should we take a U-turn and deprecate the feature or so on? Some of the experimentation, A/B tests or multivariate tests help with that. But it's still, I've seen several product teams who can benefit by recognizing that something is a two-way door decision and then treating it as a two-way door decision. Here's a quick matrix I've made for myself, and this is from personal experience. And it's kind of useful for product leaders as well, where if you plot it on the vertical axis, you have the reversibility, so one-way door on the top and two-way door on the bottom. And then on the horizontal axis, if you have impact of the outcome with low impact on the left and high impact on the right, you can see that the top right quadrant is where you want to spend most of your time. If you're looking at a one-way door decision that is high impact, with the high impact of the outcome, you want to break it down into smaller decisions. Hopefully, some of those smaller decisions are two-way door decisions or have a lower impact, and then spend most of your time to make considered choices to make sure that the outcome is what you desire. And the rest can be delegated. And I personally believe that if you have junior PMs in your team, giving them a two-way door, a reversible decision with a low impact, I'm talking about just out of school or an associate PM, somebody who's new to the profession. The easiest and the fastest way to build a new PM's confidence and conviction in the craft is to let them own a decision. And no matter whether they're right or wrong, once they own a decision, once they have the authority, the accountability, the ownership of making a call, a product call, customer-facing product call, they'll actually grow faster as a PM. And then for senior folks, more experienced folks, you want to get them to start taking one-way door decisions with lower impact, as well as high impact two-way door decisions. Now, I've overgeneralized here. I realize that. But having some kind of a framework for yourself, even as an individual product builder, to dedicate your mental bandwidth accordingly will be useful. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you spend the same amount of time on a two-way door decision as you spend on a one-way door decision. I think that'll be blasphemy. So it's very critical to be aware of what you're dealing with and then use your time accordingly. This is very important. So please, I think this is, agree with you, Deepak. Please keep this in mind. I have one more topic I want to quickly cover, which is communicating decisions. And I'm going to use Beckert-Harris change model formula just to make sure everyone's aware of it. I'm not sure. So this is, again, I didn't come up with it, but this is really good. I've used it so many times throughout my career and it hasn't failed. And I actually think some of it really helps with the press release and the narrative are really great tools to use this. So let me explain what this is. Every time you build a new product or you're doing something, you're making a decision, it often leads to a change. Any decision you make typically means that something has to change. And for you to communicate as a product builder, you are typically in charge of communicating that change and bringing all the stakeholders along with you, and oftentimes bringing partners and customers along with you, bringing press and your board members along with you. What I've found, and what, as the formula says, that any resistance you face to change can be overcome as long as the three factors, so the three vectors on the left are addressed. And the three vectors are, D stands for dissatisfaction with the status quo. So if you are building a new music service that's optimized for voice, what is the dissatisfaction with the customers? That, hey, customers are asking for a song by saying whatever comes to their mind, not really typing up specific name of the song, and they're not getting it. How dissatisfied are they? And you can kind of quantify the dissatisfaction by looking at the number of requests that fail, number of voice requests that fail for a certain query, or just asking customers what pain they are feeling in a certain set of scenario for your product. The second aspect is vision, painting a very succinct but very clear vision of the future, that once our product is ready, once we execute on this decision, the vision is so awesome that there's no chance for any resistance, because it's going to solve a lot of problems. And then the last but most important piece is first steps. oftentimes, we have inertia steady that's due to other set of belief system that, hey, yeah, it's important, but it's kind of costly. It's important, but we have these other things that are happening already. So we don't want to kind of divert the team into that. So you want to showcase, so you want to show that it's very easy to take the first steps. So as long as you can show that the product of existing dissatisfaction, how awesome the vision is, and how easy is it to get started, if that is larger than the resistance that you may face or you're already facing, and if you can explain it in the narrative that you write or a pitch deck you are creating, that often helps in writing, in getting the decisions approved or decisions adopted. And stakeholders, once you start using that same vocabulary for one feature, then stakeholders will start understanding, and they'll say, hey, yeah, tell me about the first steps here. Now, having done that for many times, now many of my stakeholders will just say, hey, tell me, I didn't quite get the dissatisfaction piece here. I didn't quite get why the first steps are so easy. So it's amazing. It's magical when everyone's speaking the same language. So you want to kind of start doing it repeatedly. So it'll help you with having a common vocabulary and then address the issues right away. Important thing to note here is that the left-hand side of the equation is the product. So you need all three. You have a good overview of dissatisfaction and the vision, but not the first steps. It's not going to work because the sum of the left-hand side will be zero. Or if you have the first step and the vision, but it's not clear what the pain points are, people will be like, man, why it doesn't seem to be that important. So you need to understand that all three items on the left, you have a solid answer for. So those were my prepared remarks. I'll end with a quote from Jeff, like start with the customers and work backwards. Never fails. I can say that based on personal experience. And thank you so much for listening thus far. Feel free to reach out to me, Kintan on Twitter, and love to stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks so much for a great talk. I appreciate it. You covered a lot of great stuff, some awesome framework. So thanks for sharing that with us.